everyone, and welcome to another SDM podcast. I am Bree Wilson, the managing editor of SDM Magazine, and I'm joined today by Jeremy White, who founded Pro-Vigil in 2006 and serves as the company's CEO today. As a pioneer in the remote video monitoring industry and someone passionate about innovation, Jeremy is going to talk to me today about the early days of and evolution of remote video monitoring, as well as his outlook on the future of security. Before we get started, Jeremy, could you share a bit more about yourself and how your role at ProVigil has kind of evolved with the company over the years?
Sure. Yeah. From founding the company in 2006 and wearing many hats at one time to, I would say, just over the evolution. And as we've brought in, up to almost 900 employees now that fill a lot of those roles and those functions. I found myself in certain stages of the organization, really focused on, titles aside, really certain initiatives or different phases of the business where, and challenges, maybe there are headwinds due to some economic situation or where you need to shift and pivot within an organization. And so I've tried to always be the player on the team that will fill whatever gap needs to be filled at the time. And that could be an executive position, or that could be running a very specific promotion or project. And so I've really tried to be that individual that will fill in a gap at a period of time or step up and take something on that needs to be done. So that's kind of how I've envisioned my role, as even stepping out of the CEO role, but playing more of a in the enterprise sales and face of the company and that role back into more of a structured executive role again. And it's just timing and when it's time to move in and move around. And so that's kind of how I've always faced, or thought of my function in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. What a refreshing perspective from a CEO and someone who founded the company as well. So let's jump into then the early days of ProVigil and remote video monitoring. So as we both mentioned, 2026 marks 20 years since you founded ProVigil. When you look back at 2006, what motivated you to start the company? Was there a market gap that you were trying to fill at the time?
Yeah, I think after some research we had done with a group of investors, we had done a couple small startups and successful exits, but small. But I think I gained some confidence and had confidence in a group of investors to go find something a gap somewhere and not from the security industry, but really started to look around and noticed over time a gap. The gap that I think that we filled is, the security space was very product driven. And so the gap there was, for me, is to take hardware products and really turn that into a service, something with, an ROI, something that actually provides the need, of what that function of that hardware was designed to do, whether it's managing it or monitoring it or, but really going from products and white sheets and stat sheets on cameras and NVRs and alarm devices really into making a solution out of all of those things combined together. That was really the vision.
Absolutely. And did you envision that ProVigil would become what it is today, or were there some kind of pivotal moments that changed the company's direction along the way?
Oh, sure. Of course I did. No, yeah, you always wish, I look at it day by day. There's a lot of shifting and changing that you have to do, adopting, evolving, changing. Right? And it's one of my key things that I communicate to the entire team always is like embrace change, like actually look for it. That's evolution. That's how we move forward. So very proud of how we've gotten here and what we've done. To say when I started this, did I think that I would be doing this 20 years later? And yeah, I would probably say no. I would have thought I'd been on to something else by now. I love this space. I love that, there are a few of us that were very early adopters. Great people, know most of them, if not all of them. And, I think we're all still very passionate about RVM. It's got a long way to go. The addressable market out there and the industry adoption is just in its infancy. So 20 years in an industry is really a very small, a very short period of time. We're probably just now coming out of elementary and moving into middle school at this point in terms of schooling and education across the industries, and then adoption across the industries of how powerful RVM is.
Absolutely. And you're not only just an early adopter, but a pioneer in remote video monitoring. What did it look like in those early days, and why did you believe it would become important?
Yeah, I mean, it looked very different. Everything was more difficult than it is today, just from, 2G cellular coverage to analog cameras and solar and battery technology being very poor in its infancy back then. So I think those of us that, were in that early 2000s era, everything was much more difficult then than it is now. We really had to struggle to come up with ways to get this from point A to point B and back. And so I really think we we worked with what we had, and we had to really engineer and be scientists and create things that you can now buy off the shelf or at the next trade show.
So let's dive a little deeper into the evolution of RVM and other changes that you've observed in the security industry. So, how would you describe RVM today? I know you said we're kind of in a middle school era with it. Are there still gaps that security companies haven't tapped into?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, RVM in general, from the outside looking in, it looks like we all do things the same way. And in general, we might use some of the same technology and the same cameras, but we still do things very differently. And I think some gaps in that are, I hate to say it, but even around some just regulation to tighten, how the deliverable, of RVM, just like if you thought of Berg or Fire or even access control, the tightening of what RVM is and what you're delivering to an end user, and how that's measured and what success looks like and what the expectations from the other side are. Because there are limitations in RVM that say you may not have in man guarding, where I'm remotely witnessing something, and I can verbally or visually, attempt to deter, but I can't apprehend or approach, and so I think there are nuances and, part of some of the gaps in RVM in general from a security perspective, or even from, end user or customers, is expectation setting, what we can and can't do. And RVM is always, we've always said it's a gray area. You're interpreting human behavior and what they're doing from a remote location. And so really trying to tighten that into something very black and white, something that you can repeat and be accurate, and very responsive in terms of time, are really important. So those are the gaps and kind of struggles that we all are continually working on day in and day out to really try to tighten up.
Absolutely. And are there any customer stories that stand out as kind of defining moments for the value of RVM throughout the years?
Yeah, I think there's one that I think of because it's relatively new. I've seen we've many customer stories, obviously, but there's one that's new, and I actually just did personally flew out and sat with the owner, or president, CEO. It's a affordable housing multifamily organization. Well over 100 locations across many states. And this was a very new task for us to go from, I mean, their ask was to go from manned guarding during certain hours to an RVM solution, basically in public, where people are free to walk around the apartments and in and out of, the laundromat and around the pool areas. And yet there are certain things and behaviors and activities that we're looking for. And while they were very skeptical, they went forward, and from just a financial perspective, if you just looked at, cutting guarding hours, to just those optimal hours we blend with the guard and work together, they were able to save $7 million last year just in that aspect. And that is not what's so impressive to them after sitting and meeting with them. They were very skeptical that deploying video systems on their locations and then being able to monitor and provide reporting and trends and all of the things. We have an incident analysis team that has a very detailed and custom report for this particular customer. But it really is one that that entire industry now we can leverage and rinse and repeat. But for him to tell me that he was so skeptical, and that the impact that not just Pro-Vigil, but RVM deployed properly, how much that's impacted their business, all of his property managers, the insight they have into their investments and their tenants, is very impactful. So much so that, he's offered to go on video to be a reference. I mean, he's really an advocate. And so I think that's, deploying RVM for the first time into an industry that we hadn't really done before, but then being able to work with the customer to understand the real needs and then the capabilities on our side. I think it's a great story of us even 20 years later deploying in a new environment and creating a success, which is only going to benefit the RVM family out there, this industry, as there are new adoptions within new industries and verticals. So I think we all benefit from it.
Yeah, and 7 million is a very pretty penny, and that's bound to make an end
Yeah,
user very happy.
right.
So, with the importance of RVM and, it still being a relatively new or not as widely adopted, vertical in security, what advice would you give to other dealers and integrators who are considering RVM or who kind of want to grow in this space?
Yeah, I mean, we've been through kind of the channel where we've worked with other dealers and integrators and really kind of seen the challenges as well. And it is that you are selling a solution over a product, and maybe the product margins are lower, but you're securing so much recurring revenue, and that's the beauty of RVM. If you look at the recurring revenue of a burglar system that you installed that took roughly the same amount of sales time and power to a RVM solution, it's many times over in the capture of recurring revenue. So I think a healthy dose, a mixture of it in their portfolio of solutions and products that they offer. I would say work with those of us in the industry. I don't think it's a great idea for everybody to try to monitor cameras. I think they're third parties. There are companies like Pro-Vigil and others, and that offer even a white labeled solution that you can go out and if you're already well versed in installing cameras, why not have that conversation around, have you thought about having these monitored? There's key things to think about, and that's, you store assets outdoors. Those are susceptible. You could, just having that ability to capture more revenue, and it's more value to their customer base to bring, as you're talking about, needing a new video system or an upgrade or one for the first time, to that consultative approach and being able to talk about, is this particular location ripe for potentially RVM? I would say look at all the RVM players out there, interview them. What are their strengths and weaknesses? What partner programs do they have? For example, will they white label so that they're using their logo? And when somebody calls into Operations Center, do they answer with your name or at least with something generic to keep the playing field even? I mean, those are things I would look for, but I would strongly recommend that all integrators and Bergen Fire businesses really think about adoption of RVM as it goes forward because the market is absolutely, it's been very low penetrated and there's billions of dollars of opportunity out there.
Absolutely. And what else would you say has shifted in security over the past 20 years? I know it's a big question, but for example, if you were to compare security technology in 2006 to what's available today, what changes would you say have been the most transformative for ProVigil and for the industry at large?
Yeah, I mean, from RVM specifically, it really has been around bandwidth. And that ties to the resolution and frame rates of cameras today. We were dealing with analog cameras and we were trying to digitize those and send those over cellular networks. And now, you can deploy an 8K camera that'll cover almost an entire parking lot, with built-in AI so what's adopted is, I mean, even I think back then, and you think of, we had video analytics, so a motion analytic or a cross-line detection. And today you deploy an AI agent that is identifying vehicles and capturing the license plate, as well as the speed and direction, and the number of occupants inside the vehicle. I mean, it's night and day of what we were still, I would say, even though we were watching cameras, we felt more like a physical security provider, and asset protection provider. And today it's way more technology, business intel, getting into the other needs of the businesses other than just security, but safety, which is also a major function of the security industry, and other business intel that helps them run their businesses better. So it's night and day for sure. And in 20 years, I'm sure it'll be even uh, be much more different.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd also love to talk about everyone's favorite topic, AI. You always have such great things to say about AI, and it's on everybody's mind, so I know we have to talk about it. First, I'd love to know how Provigil responded to the introduction of AI into the market. Can you tell me when you began integrating with AI and how you've been able to kind of keep up with all of the changes and evolutions?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would say we were an early adopter, and by adopter, I mean we actually deployed. And so it's been about 5 years. We deployed it we deployed it across every customer camera at the same time. And its only function at the time was to determine whether the motion event from the camera was a person or a vehicle. That's it. And I think we started in the high 50% accuracy rate. And over time, and through our monitors actually grading it as they took those events and then turned those into actionable items, it learned, right? So we would feed every single interaction over time. And so 5 years later, we have a very accurate, very fast, just on the monitoring side. What it allows you to do is scale. The accuracy, it allows you to add more cameras and have a great, you know, gross margin and be able to grow and scale without just continually having to hire to keep up with that. The accuracy and speed from a customer standpoint is what they're looking for. If I respond 3.5 minutes later, they're gone or damage is done. So it allows us to filter through, maybe less actionable or not relevant events and really be able to escalate events quicker. So it's speed and accuracy that really matters most in RVM. And then we've adopted it even in our field services division now. So last year we had an AI agent watching our remote technicians solving problems by recycling a router remotely and just simple things like that and it learned and it started doing it itself. And as a result, last year we reduced truck rolls, meaning we had to send somebody to a site to resolve an issue. This agent that learned by reading every ticket that we've ever resolved and then just applying those automatically, we reduced our truck rolls by 55% last year. So, I mean, the impact to business, it didn't replace anybody. It made us move faster and it allowed our technicians to focus on much more difficult scenarios that either the AI hasn't learned yet or it just requires human intervention. So, those are two. And then my favorite is that in 2026, the first thing that initiative that I brought forth to the entire team is that everybody in this company, every department, and every person in this company is going to leverage AI. So, working with our tech team and our engineering and full tech team and our CTO, department by department, we're learning what their needs are and how we're able to leverage AI. And that's just going to make the business scale and make us more responsive and hopefully increase customer satisfaction as well.
Absolutely. So you've spoken previously, even earlier in this podcast, about the kind of dire need for education across the security industry, applicable specifically to AI adoption and security. What do you think business leaders need to better understand?
For me, as I've tried to implement it in my day to day, it was how do I use it? It really, so now I think about what is the task at hand and what am I trying to achieve? And so I really think that's how, as a business, what are the needs as we think about kind of department? It's the same as any organization looking to adopt AI, whether it's in the monitoring aspect or any other aspect of their business. what what's the task or what's the solution, that the end result that you're looking for, and work backwards. I just ask it, basically, this is what I'm looking for at the end. Help me get there. And so I really feel like that the education for me, I still struggle. I mean, I'm still writing my own email, but it's giving me guidance
Yeah.
and much more difficult things than that. But it really is opening up. I've talked to you about before. It's the adoption and being open and willing to. You have to put in time too. It's not going to do this on its own. And so I think, setting aside the time and the resources and understanding how you want to leverage it to impact your business is really the most important.
Definitely. So, to wrap up here, I'd like to talk about ProVigil's legacy and your thoughts on running a business that's lasted for 20 years in an evolving market. So, what do you think has allowed ProVigil to not only survive for 20 years, but to continue growing the whole time as well?
Oh, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, good people. We've made some of the right decisions at the right times. There's been hardships 08, 09, yeah, and then, another big one was kind of COVID, big shifts. And you have to pivot in an organization. But if the organization is built to really embrace those changes, those pivots, and those changes in the organization that you have to make, but it is the people. I mean, you have to surround yourself with strong people and stay out of the way. In leadership, it really is, hiring that next generation, to come in and to embrace the change and the evolution and really important for me, it's okay to make mistakes. I tell every single person that. Let's try not to make the same mistake twice. It's a little different discussion,
Yeah.
but let's make mistakes and learn from that. That's the only way we get better. So this organization embraces change. It embraces make a mistake. Let's fail. Let's fail fast and get it fixed. And so yeah, those are the things we really try to instill in the organization.
And you've been involved in the company very heavily, not even just in a CEO role. It sounds like you take on anything. What's kept you energized and engaged in ProVigil after all these years?
I think that, this afternoon, I'm going to spend the entire afternoon in the production facility. I think it's change of scenery. I think it's interaction with customers. I think it's, diving into a big problem or spending an hour aside blocked to just focus on AI within, my daily dealings. So I really do think it is the ability for me to, jump on a plane and go speak with a customer and get the voice of a customer research like I did with this particular one to understand better how the rest of that industry can adopt RVM. So I really think it's the freedom, because I have such great people running their departments and doing what they do. for me personally, it has been the ability to plug in where I need to, but then unplug and just go see how the organization's working. And that's what I love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So another good old advice question here, but what advice would you give to leaders who are trying to build companies that do succeed for decades?
I mean, surround yourself with good people and stay out of the way. I mean, it really is. I think I've been so proud of this organization and the people that have led it. From every role in the organization, and I do think it really does matter. You got to stay strong and stay true to you. You've got to treat people right. The organization has to have the culture has to fit the objective, and I think we've done that here, and I think that's for a fast-moving, fast-growing, very young organization. These are the things you have to adopt, which is change and being able to stay out of its way.
Absolutely. So before we finish up here, I'd like to ask you a couple of kind of a quick fire outlook questions about how you view and are preparing for the future of security. So taking it back to RVM, what do you see as kind of the next evolutions of remote video monitoring?
AI is not just a buzzword, it's here, it's for real, and it's exciting in this space, so I think there's just going to be a lot more automation. I believe that AI it's definitely shifting from to a predictive model
Mm.
based on data and its years of analysis and watching this same scene, that it can actually predict things that could happen so that we could stop them or alert or just know and anticipate of something happening in the very near future. Or so I definitely, we're already working in a predictive environment within Pro-Vigil. We're predicting staff headcount for the next 3 days based on how much activity and weather in certain areas and many other factors.
Yeah.
So that's just in staffing. But so yeah, I really do think automation, drones and robots, they're coming in. They're in the trade shows, but they're going to be out and about. And I think RVM will embrace those technologies as well. But I see a lot of automation and a lot of predictive analysis and that moving forward in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And AI or robotics may very well be your answer to this question as well. But is there something that you're keeping a really close eye on right now that you think is preparing you and ProVigil for what security is going to look like in 5, 10 years?
Those are definitely a few of them. The other things I really keep a close eye on are how does a customer benefit more from us and with the data that we collect. So I think a lot, like our CTO, Satish, I think a whole lot about data. We collect so much data. So down the road, how do we use this data to help these businesses and to help our businesses? From just business intelligence but it, you know, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of cameras each of our companies have out deployed. And video is one of the largest, sensors of collecting data. That's where my head goes. Yes, drones and robots, it's, something that is going to be adopted. My opinion, drones before robots, but they're all coming. And they will leverage RVM and our technology. But I really think the data collection is super important, and how we leverage that going forward is really exciting.
Absolutely. And finally, again, looking at kind of 5 to 10 years out, what else do you hope that ProVigil will accomplish?
Global domination.
That's the dream, isn't it?
Look, to continue to grow healthily, a healthy business, continue to have a culture that people want to work for you, and they want to be here, and whether it's growth into definitely more industries. So this is what's exciting to me is that there are so many industries that have just either just adopted RVM or haven't even adopted it yet. So what do I want to do the next 5 years? I want to be in those industries. I want to be in those associations. I want to talk about how RVM can impact their organizations, just like the one who was so skeptical and now is an advocate. So I really, that's personally I'll spend my time, and I think that will also influence not only our organization but RVM as it grows into the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining me, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We will see you on the next STM podcast.